Here we go.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. This is Raquel. And we are going to start out with, we have another review, which is always awesome.
Yay!
Yay! This one is from, and I hope I'm pronouncing their name right, but it's Ariel or Ariel 82. And they say, this podcast is really inspiring. The guests are interesting, honest, and bold. The hosts are the same. I'm feeling stuck in life and like a change is coming, and this is moving me forward. Highly recommend.
That is such a great compliment. Yeah. And I also think the comments aren't, I don't know how you feel, Raquel, but I feel like the comments are inspiring. Like it, it says to me, keep doing what we're doing.
Exactly. Keep at it. What we're doing. Keep at it. And Ariel, yes, keep moving forward. It's you're getting through it. It's gonna get better. It's gonna get better. Just keep pushing. So
change is scary, but change can be good.
Yeah. I'm not always the biggest fan of change because it is very scary. But when it's good change, then I'm a little less scared. But yeah, change is scary for sure.
Change can be scary.
Yeah. Okay, so let's get into the meat of today's episode. Okay, so I'm gonna do a little trigger warning here at the beginning. We are going to talk about suicide and suicidal ideations. So for anyone listening, if this is too much for you, or if this is going to push buttons for you that you don't want pushed, please step away now and then just come back for the next episode. Or if you feel that there's somebody who could benefit from hearing this, then definitely forward it to them if you think it would be beneficial. But I just wanted to put that out there.
I've got a question already.
Oh, sure, go ahead.
Why did we decide to do suicide right now as our topic?
Well, September is Suicide Prevention and Suicide Awareness Month. And we are going to have this episode air on September 30th, which, yes, that's the very last day of September and the last day of the awareness month. But
just in the nick of time.
Just in the nick of time. And you can really never talk too much about awareness and prevention when it comes to suicide, I think, because you never know when somebody's going to need the information.
I think oftentimes it's not that you'll never know when they need the information. I think it's often the people that you really don't think need the information. They appear to have it all together, being really cool and happy. And I think a lot of times when we see celebrities in the news that have committed suicide, we're like, wait a second, they're so happy. They have everything. And so maybe every day is a good day to bring these things out into the open.
That's a good point. That's a really good point. Yeah.
Not just September.
Yeah. So yeah, I agree with you. That's a very good point. So I'm going to list out some stats that I found when doing research for today. There's some stats from this organization called SAVE, and that stands for Suicide Awareness Voices of Education. And I'll provide a link to that in the show notes. But here's some of the stats that they listed. Suicide is the 10th leading cause of death in the US for all ages.
That's high.
Very high. Suicide takes the lives of over 48,500 Americans every year.
Wow.
Yeah. Depression affects 20 to 25% of Americans over the age of 18. Doesn't sound like a big number, but when you think about the number of people, that's a pretty big number.
That's 1 in 4. That's a huge number.
Well, yeah. Okay. Well, yeah. When you put it that way, yeah. That is big. And it says only half of all Americans experiencing an episode of major depression receive treatment. And that's for a variety of reasons. And I think we all can think of some of those, lack of insurance, lack of job, not enough
Fear.
money, lack of access. I mean, there's a whole bunch of
Scared.
reasons for that. Fear, shame, there's a lot.
I bet
Um,
shame is a big one.
it's a huge one. It's a huge one. And it was for me for a very long time. 80 to 90% of people that do seek treatment for depression are treated successfully using therapy and or medication. So there is help out there. There is a way through it. And women are more likely than men to have had suicidal thoughts. That surprised me.
Me too.
Women also experience depression at roughly twice the rate of men. I don't think that necessarily surprises me, but I think maybe depression presents itself differently for men. So I wonder if maybe there's some, maybe those numbers might be a little different.
Well, I mean,
in my opinion.
Think about the topics we've been discussing: suppression of anger, loneliness, suppression of emotions in general, not being able to be your true and authentic self.
Yep.
I think all of those things
Mhm.
probably lead to depression.
Oh,
You know,
yeah.
the more you shove everything down,
Mhm.
the bluer you tend to get, right? And I don't
Yeah.
mean to say that lightly. I think
Right.
there's a strong correlation.
Mhm. Absolutely. Apparently women attempt suicide 3 times as often as men. That surprised me.
Wow.
That surprised me. And suicide rates for women are highest among those aged 45 to 54.
That's really
Very
interesting.
surprising.
That's
Very,
our
very
age
surprising.
group.
Yes, it is. Yes, it
Wow.
is. That is very frightening.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's incredibly frightening.
That's
So,
us.
yeah. So talk to your friends. Please pay attention to your friends. And so another reason why we wanted to talk about this is because I have had experience with depression. I've dealt with depression off and on since college. I've been in and out of therapy since college. I've been on and off medication since, oh gosh, maybe since law school. Yeah, maybe since law school. Although for the last few years, I'm just like completely on, like there's no off at this point. And that was something that I had some shame around, the whole thing of, dealing with depression, right? Like growing up, there was this whole thought of, don't let them see you sweat, don't let people see anything negative, and don't let them know they got you down, that whole thing, strong Black woman, blah, that whole thing. And so I didn't talk about it. I didn't talk about it with very many people at all. There were very, very few people who knew, and I felt very ashamed about it. And I thought, well, there's something wrong with me. I'm broken. But as I got older and started to realize that it was more common than I realized, like I started to think about it a little bit differently, but I still was very guarded about it. And then I have a friend who was very open about her struggles with, anxiety and depression and things like that. And I thought, wow, if she's so open about it, and I don't think any less of her, why would I expect that other people would think less of me for being open about it? So that was sort of oh, go ahead.
So her talking about it helped you to process it.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. And so I thought, okay, it kind of got the wheels spinning a little bit, like, okay, maybe I don't have to be ashamed about this, right?
No, maybe.
Well,
you don't
yeah.
have
yeah, no, maybe. And so for me, with depression, I would have very intense lows, like very, very intense, to the point that it would scare me. And I would think I'm never going to come out of this. Like I'm just going to be depressed and, I don't know what's going to happen.
What's
And so,
interesting about that to me, Raquel, is that you say that, and on the surface, you're always smiling and vivacious and friendly. And so I bet people around you didn't really even know that.
yeah. Yeah. And the thing is that I am all of those things
Right.
still and always have been. It's just there's a chemical imbalance that I'm maybe a little more susceptible to depression and the lows that can come with depression. And so I have learned that I have to be vigilant about my medication. And that is something that's a non-negotiable for me. And it took me a very long time to figure that out because I would take the medication. I'd be like, oh, I'm fine. I don't need it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Or, I'd be between jobs and wouldn't have insurance. Or I'd have a job that either didn't have insurance or it did, but it didn't cover my meds, or I didn't make enough money to purchase them or whatever. And I'd be on and off and on and off. And that's not good. That's just
let's take one step back.
Okay.
Because it didn't start with medication, right?
Right.
How did you decide that your blue periods, or you're feeling down, or you're feeling depressed, or how did you know it was time to seek help?
Because I was scared. I was very scared.
Scared
Because my lows would get so low, and I think my gut just told me something wasn't right.
Okay.
And it felt so heavy. Like I felt it physically.
And then what was your first step to getting help for that?
My first step was finding a therapist.
Okay.
And I think there was, like I said, this was probably, well, I think the first time I saw a therapist, but without medication, was in college. And there was a lot of, family turmoil going on, and, new environment, and being around a lot of people that, I felt were so different for me, who, I mean, come to find out, they weren't really that different for me, but you just have that feeling, when you're in college and you're like, I don't fit in,
Yeah, I think everyone goes through that.
And I just thought I need somebody other than just like venting to a friend.
Yeah.
I felt like I needed some guidance. And
were you a fit with your first therapist?
No. That's been kind of trial and error.
Mm-hmm.
I have a therapist right now who I've been with her for a very, very long time. And she has been incredibly gracious and understanding. And like, she's been around for the long haul. Right. So, yeah, but it took a while.
So in that first therapist, you said that you didn't start medication then, you started therapy. What was that road like? You went to therapy. What kind of things started to change for you? And then how did you get onto the road to medication?
I think what started for me during my first go rounds with therapy was being able to talk about what was going on with my family and, the upheaval that was going on, and upheaval that had been happening as I was growing up, and finally being able to talk to somebody about it and not being judged about it.
Yeah. I think that's key to therapy, is that you can talk to someone who is not involved.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And it wasn't until like I said, it wasn't until law school that I'm guessing it was probably law school that I started medication, because I just felt like just talking wasn't moving the needle. Like I needed
More.
more, right? And like I said, I had been, on and off meds for years, between jobs not paying enough money, whatever. And
When you were on meds, were you
Mhm.
feeling better?
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. And then I would think, oh, okay, I'm fine. I don't need these anymore. I can wean myself off. Right.
I've
And then
heard
I'd be fine. And, I'd be fine for a long time. I think, oh, I'm good. And then, something would happen, like things always do. And I'd be like, okay, I'm fine. I can handle this. But then more things would happen. And I'd realize, wow, my reaction to what's happening is not in line with what actually is going on. Like my reaction is way bigger than what's actually happening.
So I don't know if you're comfortable sharing this, but like, what were some of the reactions? Like, what seemed way too big to you?
Um, like I was one instance was I was working in a job where, again, I mean, and this was like years of, working jobs where I was underemployed, right?
Yeah.
Um, which kind of added to my depression, because I really just, I mean, I felt like a failure. I felt like I was a loser. Um, I felt like I had let myself down, and I felt like I had let all these other people down. And I mean, because here I was, I had just graduated from law school and, went to this great university for undergrad, and I'm the smart girl and I should be making bank, right? But I wasn't, I mean, life was a huge struggle.
Yeah.
Uh, and I was working at a job, and I think it was either one of my bosses or a coworker or somebody was just, I don't know, kind of a butthead maybe. And I mean, I was just crying like somebody had just, like someone had basically run me over with a car. I mean, I was just overwhelmed with my reaction to it. Like and which could also be, that I was so frustrated with my own situation.
The damn.
But it was so, like, my reaction was so big, and I literally was just crying my eyes out, and I thought, wow, like it's almost like I kind of stood back and watched myself, and I was like, this reaction is out of measure with what's actually happening.
I see.
And I knew I needed to do something. So I went back into therapy, and I got back on medication, thankfully. And so, but again, like I said, off and on with the medication, and off and on with the therapy.
Mhm.
And I got to a point where, it was like this long period, years long period of intense stress, uh, you know, job working, jobs where I was treated poorly by a boss, and I felt trapped in the job. And I wasn't making enough money. So I was always stressed about money and being able to pay bills, and being worried about, oh my God, I'm going to lose my apartment, or, oh my God, I'm going to lose my car, or how can I buy groceries? I mean, it was like all of this. And so all of that, with the fact that I'm already sort of predisposed for depression. So all of that, just sort of bundled up together, and, me feeling like I had let myself down, and like I was just wasted potential, right? And, and I was friends with all these people and they were all doing so well. And I would look at them and I thought, I am not doing anything. Like my life is just not measuring up. So it's that whole, compare and despair thing that is dangerous in a good, in a good period. Right. And but extended periods of stress have a cumulative effect as well. And so I was very, I didn't have any hope, right? Like I felt very hopeless. And I was in this really, really deep depression. And, and it would kind of ebb and flow a little bit, but the extended period of stress was still there. Like it lasted for so long. And, and don't get me wrong. I mean, I have people around me who love me and who are amazing people, but I didn't feel like I could reach out to anybody. And so I didn't.
Why not?
Partly because I didn't want to be a burden to people. And partly because there would be times where I would say something and somebody else would say, you really shouldn't talk about stuff like that because that just makes everybody else feel bad.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And I thought, well, shit, I don't want to make people feel bad. And then that made me feel worse because I was like, I'm making other people feel bad. I don't want to do that.
Okay. Anybody who's listening right now, you are not responsible for someone else's feelings. That's their responsibility. Raquel, you are not responsible for anyone else's feelings. That's their responsibility. You're responsible for your own actions, how you treat others, what you bring to the world, taking care of yourself. But if you're taking care of yourself and you're reaching out to a friend and you're saying, I'm not in a good spot, and they react badly, that's on them.
Yeah.
And
I know that now.
Okay.
Yeah, I know that now.
I just want anyone else out there feeling that same way. Like, I don't want to make someone feel bad. First of all, you cannot make anybody do anything in regards to their feelings. Their feelings are their own. And we all have weird reactions for whatever reasons.
Right.
But that is not your responsibility. Your responsibility is to be yourself authentically and to speak your truth and to ask for help when you need it.
Amen to all of that.
Sorry.
To all of that. No, that's perfect. But I didn't feel any of that at that time.
Of course. And I'm sorry.
And so, when I was going through all of this, like my therapist could tell, obviously, I mean, it's what she's trained for.
Yeah.
And she would ask me from time to time if I was okay and if I could keep myself safe. And for the most part, I could. But she made me promise that if I ever got to a point where I couldn't keep myself safe, or if I had a plan and felt like I was going to act on it, she made me promise to call a suicide hotline.
Let's play clear here for a second. Did your therapist ask you if you were suicidal?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So she asked you if you were having suicidal thoughts.
Yes. Yes. Because I did get to a point where I would say that I didn't have any hope anymore, that I didn't think things were ever going to get better. And that I was tired, that I couldn't do it anymore. Did
it feel heavy?
It felt so heavy. It felt so heavy, like physically, like it literally felt like something was on me, and sometimes it would feel like my chest was like someone was just pressing on my chest sometimes.
So it's mental and it's physical and you're exhausted.
Yes, I was incredibly exhausted. And there were times during all of this that I was working 2 and 3 jobs at a
So
time.
you had a right to be exhausted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did. I did for sure. And and it got to a point where, I had worked at a job for, it was a year where I was working for a particular boss who was so toxic. And this isn't just, oh, my boss doesn't like me. No, that's not it. That's not it. This particular boss was incredibly toxic. They would yell at me loudly in front of other people, would say that any mistake of the department was on me, regardless of who made the mistake. I was crying every day at work, at home. And I felt like oh, go ahead.
And you stayed because
I stayed because I didn't have any other choice. I didn't have anybody who, like, I didn't have family to fall back on.
to bail you out.
And I had been sending out resumes and couldn't find anything.
Yeah.
So I didn't have another job just like around the corner, right?
So you felt trapped in this toxic situation.
Yeah, very
Yeah.
trapped. And and it eventually got to the point where it just wasn't working anymore. Like, I'd like friends of mine were concerned for me because of what they saw in me, and they were concerned.
Yeah.
And and at that point, I mean, I didn't have the best coping skills, and even if I had, certain situations are just going to be toxic regardless, regardless of how good your coping skills are. But I literally had maybe no coping skills at that point, or at least none that were effective or healthy.
And so your therapist asked you at this time, were you suicidal? You said maybe. She said, did you have a plan? Did you have a plan? Plan?
Eventually, yes, I did. I had a plan.
What does that look like?
I knew what I was going to do. At that time, both of my cats were alive, and I called family. I called one of my cousins, and I made her promise that she would take my cats. And I don't want to go into specific details just because I don't want to be accused of giving anybody any ideas if anyone listening to this is triggered in some way.
Yeah.
But I had specifics planned.
So in your head, you were going step by step what you needed to do to execute.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was there. And I was let go from that particular job.
The toxic boss fired you?
Toxic boss. 2 weeks before Christmas.
Oh my God. Toxic.
Yeah. And I had been with that particular firm for 5 years.
Wow. You worked for that toxic boss for 5
years? No. I was only with that toxic boss for 1 year.
Oh, thank goodness.
Yeah, thank goodness. And so, I made it through the holidays, which the holidays are always a little bit hard for me anyway. But I made it through the holidays. I kind of white knuckled it through. And
why are the holidays tough? Because I feel a lot of people feel this way, but they don't want to say it out loud. That's what our podcast is about. Why are holidays tough?
Holidays are tough for me because there's so much expectation that the holidays are going to be perfect. And that's when
no, they're never perfect.
Oh, I know. Well, yeah, and your family's going to get together and family's going to be perfect and nobody's going to argue and everybody's going to get all the presents that they want and blah, blah, blah. And as a kid growing up with no money,
Mm,
Christmas was always incredibly disappointing
it's probably
because
rough.
everybody, you come back from break and everybody's like, what'd you get? What'd you get? I got this, I
Yeah.
got that. And I'd be like, and I would make stuff up because I was ashamed.
Yeah.
Uh, and so, and my family doesn't really have like, traditions and all of this kind of stuff around any of the holidays, really.
So you feel like the big glitzy thing you see in the media is
Yeah,
not reflected in reality in your family.
exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
not in mine either.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. We'll see. And I know this now.
Right.
But so yeah, so the holidays are always really hard. And so I made it through the holidays and you know, I'd had a little bit of severance from when I left that firm and it was starting to run out. And it got to the point where it was running out. It was running out.
So money affects your decision.
Oh yeah. 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 And so I got to a point where I just thought, I can't do this anymore. I don't want to go through this anymore. And I was really actually kind of afraid of how much worse it was going to get.
Did
And
you, were you visioning worseness? Like, were you
yeah.
going into scenarios of
Yeah, oh yeah, I was catastrophizing really bad.
how bad things could get?
Yeah.
What was the worst thing you thought of when you were thinking through that?
Um, that I was gonna be living in my car and then that I wouldn't have any money to then pay for my car and then I wouldn't have anywhere to go. And I know people are going to be thinking, oh, well, why didn't you just move back with your family? A, my therapist is here. B, my life is here. C, as much as I love my family and as much as, they love me and all that, that would not have been the best situation for me, especially in a fragile mental and emotional state. And I didn't have any money to get there. Yeah. Like I didn't have any money to get home.
That's not an option for everyone.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I just thought, that's it. I don't have any other choices. And I don't want to feel this pain anymore. And so I had my plan in my head. And I called a friend of mine who she had been taking sleeping pills, right? Because she had really bad insomnia. And I had this whole plan that I was going to borrow some from her, but I didn't get her. I ended up leaving her a voicemail and I tried to sound all peppy.
Hi, I need some sleeping pills. I can't sleep.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, pretty much. And then I called my therapist and I got her voicemail. And I thought, well, shit. I made a promise to her.
Were you calling the therapist to tell her you were planning, or were you trying to get sleeping pills from the therapist?
No, to tell her that I was planning.
Okay. So you were reaching out for help.
Yeah. And I thought, you know what? I made a promise to her that I would call the suicide hotline. And I did.
How hard was that?
That was really hard. That was really, really hard. And I was really scared. Because I really was afraid that I was going to hurt myself. And they were very kind, and they sent an ambulance and a policeman to my apartment. And while I was waiting for them, my therapist called me back. I talked to her and I told her what was going on. And my friend called me back. I told her what was happening. And I can't remember if I called or if the friend called, but there's another friend of ours who is in healthcare, and has been for maybe 20 years now, maybe longer, 25 years. And so has lots of connections and is very established here. So I told the first friend, I was like, okay, I'm going to need you to just kind of keep an eye on my cats, because they're coming and I have to go with them. They're like, okay, go pack a bag. They were very, very kind. And I didn't have any health insurance because I wasn't employed. And so for people who are against having universal health care, fuck you and kiss my ass.
Well, you just put that out there.
Yes, I did, because I've been there and it sucks and it's scary. And so they put me in the ambulance and they drove me to it's a really good hospital. But it's a hospital here in town that is the hospital that people without insurance generally are taken to. And they took my bag. And yeah, and they made me go into this bathroom and pee in a cup, but I couldn't close the door, so there's somebody watching me pee in a cup all the time. Yeah. And then they put me in an observation room, which is basically a room with a bed and a window and somebody sitting in front of the window watching me.
As if you aren't violated enough.
Yeah. And so I'm sitting there in like this hospital gown.
With your ass hanging.
Yeah. Yeah. And and this was like a Thursday. And so all I knew was that I was completely afraid. I didn't know what was going to happen. And I kept thinking, they're going to put me in some room somewhere with people that I don't know, who are in whatever levels of distress. So I was scared. I was totally scared.
Of course.
And thankfully, my friend who has the connections, who's been in healthcare, unbeknownst to me at the time, was making calls all over the place and got me released to her. And so she took me home with her that night. She came and got me. And so thankfully I didn't have to stay in the hospital. And one of the conditions was that I couldn't be alone that weekend. And there was supposed to be this girls' weekend up in the mountains, right? And I was like, I can't go. I don't have any money. And I was feeling bad about all that, and she's like, you're coming. We're not leaving you here. We're not leaving you by yourself. So she and the other friend were like, we got you. It's good. We got you. Take care, just come on. It's good. You're going to have fun. If you want to tell people, you can tell people. If you don't, you don't have to say anything. I was like, okay. And I called my mom from the mountains and told her what had happened. And I called my brother and I told him.
How
And
did your mom react?
She wasn't expecting that. Because again, yeah, because again, I didn't tell people.
Yeah.
I didn't talk about it. I kept everything inside.
Even from your mom?
Oh yeah, even with my mom. So like a week or so afterwards, I told I think like 2 or 3 more friends. And because I felt very close to them and I was just like, I just wanted you guys to know. And they were so kind. And they were like, oh my God, that is so brave of you to tell us and that you reached out for help. And I was like, what? Brave? What?
You have good friends.
I do. I do. And I started going back to therapy like more frequently. I think I was going weekly at that point. And thankfully my therapist did not ditch me, even though I didn't have money or a job or insurance at that point. And
say that about universal health care again. I loved it.
Whoever's against universal health care, fuck you and kiss my ass. So
if you didn't think we were going to get political, there it is.
We just got political. The personal is political, people. So during the time right after that, it was a lot of healing for me, a lot of concerted effort at healing and learning how to better cope.
Yeah. What does concerted effort around healing look like? What do you have to do to make that happen?
I think it's different for everybody. Mm-hmm. But for me, it's being aware of my own thoughts, right? And realizing that my thoughts aren't necessarily the truth.
Yeah, that is so key. People think their thoughts are fact and they're not. They can be very misleading.
Absolutely. And depression is a huge liar.
Yes.
Yeah. And so I have to remain ever vigilant about that. And, I'm not perfect. My coping skills aren't perfect, but they're a hell of a lot better than they used to be.
When depression lies to you, what does depression tell you?
That I'm a failure, that I'm a loser, that I'm not successful just because I don't make as much money as somebody else, or because I'm not at the same level at this age as somebody else my age. There's a lot of comparison that happens for me in my head.
Okay, now here's the better question.
Yeah.
Tell me the truth about all that. Tell me the truth about Raquel.
I'm not a failure. I'm just on a different timetable. And it's taken me a long time to realize that and then to also believe it. And part of that for me was redefining success for me.
Yeah.
And not what everybody else says success is.
Makes me wonder, because I don't have those same, and I don't think I ever have had those same ideals of success that you've talked about a couple times on the podcast now. How do you think you internalize those messages of success so strongly? Why do you think you have that?
I think it's I think it's partly because of, maybe because of the way that I was brought up, that, you know, and I don't think it's just, my mom who does this or did this. And now I'm not saying she did it purposely, but
Right. Of course she didn't.
yeah, but like my thought was like, I grew up thinking you go to college, you go to grad school, you get a great job, you buy a house, like, there's milestones and you hit them by a certain time. And there you go. That's it. There's life right there. And that you're defined by your job. Both my parents defined
Or
by
what
their
you do.
jobs.
You are
My
what
dad was a
you do.
doctor. My mom was a professor.
I see.
And that's what I saw, right? Like my mom, that's what she did. That's who she was. There wasn't anything really outside of that, you know?
She didn't show you her authentic whole human.
Right, right, right. Yes, absolutely. That is very true. That is very, very true.
Well, I think a lot of working women, and our mothers were probably the first group of truly professional women out there working.
Mhm. Yeah.
I think a lot of them didn't show their whole self. They felt that they had to be tough
Hmm.
on the exterior to make it. And they had to teach us as young women that we could make it. We could
Yep.
be anything and do anything. And
Yep.
maybe the goal setting was a little tough.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I think part of that healing for me was that I had to redefine for myself what success looked like.
Mhm.
And I knew what I didn't want to be. I didn't want to be bitter. I didn't want to be I didn't want to be this person who played the victim all the time or who even felt like a victim all the time.
Yeah.
I didn't want to feel like the world was against me. I didn't want to become bitter and hateful because that's not my nature. I mean, I generally am, yes, a very happy person and very, you know, kind of bubbly.
That's how
Um,
I would describe you.
yeah, well, thank you.
Mhm.
And so it
I take
took
that back.
a lot of time.
I take that back.
Okay.
That is how I would have described you on
Okay.
the surface until we launched this podcast. And now I know you a whole lot better than I used to. I know you a whole lot better.
Yeah.
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 Because we take the time to talk now.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
And so yeah, so I yeah, I mean, I started reaching out more to
Mhm.
people um because I realized I can't do it all by myself. As much as I would like to, I cannot. Um and so for the first year I didn't tell a lot of people. I was really just sort of processing everything and trying to heal. Uh and I felt a lot of shame around it. And I
Shame
got,
killer.
yeah, shame is a killer. And I got to a point where I just thought I can't I can't be ashamed of this anymore. I just can't. And I knew some people would kind of poo-poo the way that I did it, but on the 1 year anniversary, um, I wrote a post on Facebook. And for a lot of my friends, that was the first time they heard about it. And so I apologized in the beginning saying, I know this isn't the best way to tell people. And I'm sorry that some of you are finding out this way, but it doesn't mean I don't love you and I don't trust you. Is that I I didn't trust me, and I didn't allow myself to trust other people, and I didn't allow myself to reach out to other people, and I needed to process it first. And um and I said in the post that I I hoped that maybe it would touch somebody and make somebody realize that they're not alone, that they're not the only one going through any of that. And if that was the only thing that somebody got out of it, then that's fine. Then that was, my job was done. And a friend that I hadn't seen in years, but I was in touch with via Facebook, thank God for Facebook. And she reached out to me and said that she had been going through something similar. And she thanked me for talking about it, which I didn't expect that at all. And I got so much support from so many people. And yeah, so, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about this today, and it's specifically about my own experience with depression and suicidal ideation, is that you don't always know what people are going through. And you're not alone. People go through things. You can reach out to somebody. You don't have to go through any of this by yourself. And there's also, there's other, hotlines and organizations, and I'm going to link to a bunch of them in the show notes. Different resources that I found. And I know, like, a lot of people asked me, what could they do? How could they help? And at that point, I don't think I could really
receive it.
I could receive it, some of it. It was a little overwhelming. I could receive it, but I couldn't quite put into words how people could help.
I see.
But this organization that I mentioned earlier, SAVE, or actually, no, a different one, called Suicide Prevention Lifeline.org, has a thing that they say, how you can help, right? It says, ask, be there, keep them safe, help them stay connected. That's huge. And follow up. Check on your friends, especially the ones that you think seem really strong, and they can just take it. Shit just keeps happening to them and they're just still standing. Check on them. Check on them. Please check on them, because they may not be saying what's going on. They may not be letting you in. Please check on them, because even the strongest people will reach their breaking point. Check on people, and if you're like, oh, I don't want to be rude, or I don't want to impose, or I don't want to be nosy. You know what?
Nosy.
Just be nosy. Damn
be
it.
Fucking nosy.
Just, just go, you know what? I just want to check on you. You were on my heart. I was just thinking about you. How you doing? Do you need anything? I just wanted to give you a hug today. Can I give you a hug? Or whatever. But let people know that they are not alone. Let people know that they are connected somehow. That's huge. That is so huge. So yeah, just check on people, right? And it's funny, every once in a while I try to journal. I'm not very consistent yet, but for a while I tried using an app for journaling, and every once in a while I'll get an email saying, this is what you wrote however many years ago. Well, I got one of those emails today. And the entry that I made was like 8 months after my whole breakdown, if you want to call it that. And the title of my entry was Epiphany. Because I woke up that morning and I just had this thought. And I wrote, I had an epiphany this morning. Transition isn't like walking through a doorway. It's more akin to walking through a tunnel. You get to the end, but it takes time. I'm still in that tunnel, but I'm pretty sure I'm going to make it through the tunnel. And granted, yes, this was 5 years ago. And this hasn't been the easiest 5 years. But I've learned better coping skills during this time. My meds are non-negotiable. I don't have the shame around, therapy and depression and medication. And yes, the fact that I wanted to die. And it's not just that I wanted it. It's not exactly that I wanted to die. I wanted the pain to stop. I wanted the hurt. I wanted the hurt to stop. And I mean, yes, I'm crying, but I think you guys know already. I'm a crier. That's what I do.
We've noticed. Me and the audience, we've noticed.
Everybody notices. But it's a release, right? Like this is just how I express, and I hope that somebody listening to this realizes that they're not the only one who goes through it, and that it will get better. It will get better. It takes work. Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And it's not going to be like sunshine and rainbows every day. And it's not going to be a linear experience. It's not. But you get stronger and you build better skills and you learn how to open up to people.
And you want to live?
Yes. Yeah.
And you want to live?
Very much. Very much. I have said this before, that I feel like my life is on this like things are happening, right? Like things are changing, things are improving,
because your mind has changed, your thoughts have changed.
Yeah. And my situation has changed too. I mean, I can't leave that out, because that is very real.
For sure.
It's very real. Being in a position where I'm not having to struggle all the time, that's huge. Being in a position where I can finally start to thrive and not just survive, that's huge.
Yeah.
That's huge. And I saw a post the other day, God, and I tried to find, it was just graphic, about ways to prevent suicide. And some of the things that it listed, not the stuff that you normally think about, but it was like affordable housing,
Jobs,
a job that pays a decent wage, health insurance, education. I mean, like all these things that you don't always think about, but these are things that contribute to allowing people to actually just to thrive, right? And you can't get to thrive unless you got your bare minimums met. And if your bare minimums aren't met, then there's no way you're going to get here. There's no way. And so it is a big holistic unit. It all plays in together. It's all a part of everything else. So yeah, so I mean, I am in a really good place. I don't want people to worry. I am in a really, really, really good place. I wanted to share this to hopefully help somebody. And, and to maybe even to make it easier for myself to talk about it, because there shouldn't be shame around it. Everybody goes through shit. Everybody.
Hey, I mean, every episode lately, we've been talking about shame and how shame keeps us silent. And shame is like in a way, it's like the silent killer. If we weren't shameful of these things, we'd all be talking about them.
Yeah.
And, I've heard some falsities around suicide lately. Suicide's been a big topic in my life in this last month.
Yeah.
And people say things to me like suicide is so selfish. And I've been thinking about that a lot. I agree. I don't actually think it is.
It isn't.
I don't think it is. And I think that if you've never felt that way, it's probably really hard to understand. Well, I can say that for myself. I've never felt that way, so it's really hard for me to understand. I talked to my therapist about it quite a bit because I feel like even though my sister's death was called a drug overdose, I feel like she kind of committed suicide. Maybe not that minute, but when you're taking drugs like that on a regular basis, in a way, you are committing suicide.
Yeah.
And so that has always sat with me. And I've always grappled with why, like, why does it hurt so bad? And my therapist said to me the other day, she said, just be fucking thankful you've never felt that way. Like, be thankful.
Yeah.
And then I remember years ago, I had this kid that was working for me. He was like in his early 20s. I call him a kid, a young adult. He was so fun. He was like always smiling and the life of the party. And I used to razz him so much because he was like the young 20-year-old kid that didn't work quite as hard as he could have. And I was his boss. So I would razz him a little bit and poke him in the ribs. And he was just the life of the party. His name was Kyle. I just loved him so much. And one day they called us, Kyle committed suicide. And it just blew my fucking mind because I would have never guessed in a million years that Kyle was depressed, that Kyle was unhappy, that he was having trouble in his life. I knew that he had tried to come out to his parents. I knew that he had a relationship with a man who was quite a bit older than him. But I didn't know that Kyle would commit suicide. I had no idea. I thought Kyle was happy and maybe these things aren't mutually exclusive. Maybe there were many moments when Kyle was happy and also depressed at the same time. I loved that kid.
Yeah.
So, I mean, suicide is so complicated. I don't think that Kyle committed suicide because Kyle was selfish.
No.
I think
I would dare say that he was in pain somehow, and he just wanted the pain to stop, and he didn't know how to make it stop.
I have heard that as the explanation.
Yeah.
I know my sister was in pain, and I remember talking to her, and she would say things like, why don't mom and dad love us? And I would say, they do love us, and she would say, why don't they love us? And then I would say, okay, well, if they don't love us, I love you. And she could not feel it. She could not feel my parents' love. She could not feel my love. I don't know why that is. That's always been kind of painful to me that I was like offering it to her and she couldn't feel it.
Yeah.
I've never understood really. And I guess it isn't for me to understand, but.
Well, I don't want you to take from that either she was rejecting your love or that you didn't love her strongly enough to make her feel it.
You know, I
Neither,
thought
neither
that
of
for a
those
long
things.
time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And neither of those is true.
Yeah, I know that
What I
now.
would say is that whatever pain she was processing or experiencing didn't allow her to feel the love that was around her. And in such, I mean, Grant, I'm not a doctor, right? But that could have been a situation where medication and or talk therapy could have helped her.
Yeah, might have. Instead, she was drinking alcohol all the time. But
yeah,
big life lesson, what you just said. I can't remember your exact words. You said, don't think you didn't love her strong enough. What did you say?
Yeah, don't think that you didn't love her strongly enough for her to feel it.
Yeah, because I think that has been, since my sister's death, maybe a cross that I've chosen to carry and bear. In that, in a lot of my relationships, I feel like if I just love them strong enough, it will fix everything. That has been my own trip with therapy to fix that. Like, it's not my job to love people that strong to fix them.
Yeah. Well, you can love them that strongly,
right?
But not with the intent of fixing them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I know that now.
Yeah. 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 Thank God for therapy.
Yeah. What would we all do without our therapist?
Oh, right. Everybody get therapy. Find therapy somehow.
If you've heard any stream going through all these podcasts, is that we all need therapy. I have often wondered that as a parent, like, what am I doing or what's happening in my kids' lives that they're going to need therapy? And that's like one of the hard things about being a parent is you're like, you want to raise kids that don't need therapy, but it's like, it's impossible. This world is, and of course you're not your child's only influence either.
Exactly.
But yeah, but I'm getting us way off topic again, as I do. Yeah. Oh, suicide. I mean, I was really shocked when you said, what percentage did you say? People, the 10th
Yeah,
leading cause?
it's the 10th leading cause of death in the US for all ages.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
10th.
Yeah. And for women between the ages of 45 and 54, that's where the suicide rates are highest for women, is in that age group, 45 to 54.
Yeah. So, Raquel, you were really brave to tell your story, and your message is reach out to your friends.
Yeah. You're not in this by yourself. There's somebody out there who you have touched.
And share your stories. I mean, this is what I think. I think we are putting our podcast and other people who are joining us or listening and coming on as guests. We are putting all this in the light, and it's changing people. And Raquel, I know you cried on this episode, and I know that this was really hard. And I know you had your Kleenex ready ahead of time, but you look so much lighter now. Like, you look like you got something. You look like you set something free and you lit up. You look so much lighter now. Like you're glowing. A good cry is a person good.
That's true. It's very cleansing.
Yeah, you look clean.
Why, thank you.
So, because this was your episode, and we always end our episodes by asking our person or our guest whose episode is there anything else? Did we cover anything, or did we forget to ask? Is there anything else you would want to say or add before we end for today?
You know, I've touched on it a little bit, but it does get better. That doesn't mean it's going to be perfect. that does not mean it's going to be perfect, but you will get stronger. You will learn new and better coping skills. You will get stronger. You will be proud of yourself.
And you will love yourself.
And you will love yourself. And honestly, and this isn't a like, oh, I said one affirmation, now I'm good forever. No, that is not how that works. It is not how that works. It's definitely something that, it has to become a part of you. It has to become a part of what you do. It's another way of taking care of yourself. I know, the term self-care always makes people think of, oh, I'm gonna get, it's a bubble bath and a pedicure, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, all that stuff is good. That's cool, right? You do that. But the other part of self-care is being able to pay your bills, being able to, open up to somebody about what's going on, being able to, cut yourself some slack, because that is a hard one, at least for me, being able to cut yourself some slack. Yeah. And to just, and realize nobody's perfect. Everybody's going through something.
I think that's fucking this fixation with perfection. Fuck it, man. I'm going to be a lot less than perfect from now on.
Yeah.
Fuck that. I just wanted to swear a little. I felt like I needed to get it out.
Yeah, do it. Just get it out, honey. Let it out. Let it out. Let it out. So yeah, just know you get stronger, and shit can change on a dime, man. It can change on a dime.
You're telling me.
Yeah. So there you go. So thank you for indulging me. Doesn't sound exactly right, but
no, thank you for sharing your story.
You're very welcome. And to our listeners, thank you for listening. And
reach out if you need it.
Reach out. If y'all, like I said, I'm going to put links in the show notes to all of this. And if you need help, reach out. If you don't know what to do, ask somebody. If you know somebody who's going through something, or if you think somebody might be going through something, forward them this podcast. If you're kind of nervous about saying something and you think they're gonna think you're being rude, or they're gonna get mad at you, or they're gonna whatever, cuss you out, whatever. First off, nobody's ever died from being cussed out, so you'll be all right. Second, just forward it to them. Go, this is a really good episode. This is really interesting. I thought you might find it interesting too. Whatever, do whatever you need to do. But don't be afraid to let somebody know that you care.
Yeah.
Because it is better to deal with it on the front end, and then maybe they get mad at you and cuss you out, than to find out later that you didn't reach out and they died by suicide. So you won't die just because somebody gets mad at you.
I'm going to call, we're going to end this podcast, and I'm going to call my bestie and see how he's doing.
Good. And I send your bestie lots of love. I know he doesn't know me, but I'm going to send him lots of love. So.
All right. Thank you, Raquel.
Thank you.